Between forgotten stories, hidden quietly among the shelves, is something unique, something handmade to hold memories. At first glance, it looks like just another vintage book tucked between worn hardcovers and forgotten novels. This hidden journal blends into the books on the shelf like it's always belonged there. Today, I'm creating a junk journal disguised as a classic bookshelf book and sharing the full build and flip through. The first step is to identify what we're going to have to do to deconstruct this book. Most books are put together so that the end pages or the first end page is glued onto the text block. In this book, it looked like the first two were glued together, so that's where I kind of started pulling apart, was between the text block and these end pages. And you can see as I put some pressure, it wants to separate naturally right there. And that's what we want to see, is where we can the most easily get this book apart. So I just put a little bit more pressure on it, and it definitely wanted to open up right there. Now, books are made with a sort of a mesh that goes across the spine. You can see it right there. It's called mull, and that stuff is surprisingly strong. So you're not really going to be able to pull that apart without destroying your book or like damaging the spine. And we really don't want to do that. We want this book to look pristine, like it belongs on that bookshelf, and it's not really a journal, but just a book. So I take my craft knife, and as I'm opening the text block away from the cover of the book, where I can see that mesh, I just use my craft knife to cut through that mesh. It takes a little time, and you have to kind of go slowly with it, but it's pretty easy to get the book to open up. This video is actually going at 2 times the normal speed, so I've sped this video up a little bit, and it looks very slow. So it took me a few minutes to work these pages apart and to get that mold separated, but I feel like it's just such a cleaner look, a neater look when you do take the time to deconstruct the book like this. Once you get the first side free, you're just going to do the same thing on the opposite side of the book and work that text block completely free. When that text block is free, we're going to go ahead and peel some of the paper off of there so that we can get our headbands removed. I want to reuse the headbands that were already on this book. And then the next step for us is to loosen up the end pages so that we can get underneath there. So I'm just using my heat tool to heat up the glue and get it to melt so that it will release a little bit easier for me. And I'm trying my best not to damage the end papers. I'm just going to keep using my heat tool to loosen the glue and then to gently pull the pages away from the front cover. And once you do that and you get a little space free, you don't need much, maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch free. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. And this is what it should look like. You're going to see that book board underneath there, and it looks a little scary, but don't be intimidated by it. That's completely what we want. I don't know if you guys are the same, but for me, there's always a moment in every project where I think, oh my goodness, I just ruined this. This is never going to come back. I mean, this is the worst thing ever. And then somehow it always comes back together. So if you're thinking that once you start seeing that book board, just don't be alarmed. Trust the process and just keep on going. Here's where I pivot in my project a little bit. Originally, I was going to leave these pages and then glue them into my journal pages so that these would be the first and last pages in my journal. But I really liked that first Ex Libris page, and I wanted to use that on my front cover. So I decided to cut these end pages out, and later on, I'm just going to add that first page to the front cover. So that becomes the front cover. Before I do that though, I wanted to save that until we get our text block in. So we're going to do a little bit of paper cutting, and, I can put the measurements on the screen if you guys want those, but we're going to cut a slice of paper that perfectly fits between our end pages. So it should be about the same size as the spine of the book. And then we're going to cut one that's larger that will go underneath the end pages. So it's going to have to be larger than the spine by about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. Once I get those little papers cut, I'm going to age them up a little bit. You won't see very much of this paper, but you will see some of it. And so you want to choose a paper that you like And I spent so long trying to decide on what paper to use, and I finally settled on this one. I thought I would love it, but I ended up not loving it so much and having to do a little fix at the end. So make sure you like your paper before you choose it for your spine. Just a little tip from a lady that has been there, chose the wrong paper, and had to undo it. So keep that in mind. This first piece of cardstock is the one that measures the same as our spine of our book. And we're going to take this and I'm going to mark out where I want my signatures to fall. I'm going to have 3 signatures, so that'll be 3 straight lines vertically for my signatures. And I just measured these an equal distance apart from one another. I'm doing a 5-hole pamphlet stitch, so then I have 5 lines that go across horizontally. Now, whenever the lines cross, that's where you're going to poke your holes for your signatures. So that's what I'm doing here, is just making some holes so that I'll be able to sew my signatures in onto my spine. I always mark the top so that I can keep everything the same. And then I'm just going to use that to punch holes in my signatures. So where the horizontal lines are, that's where you're going to poke your holes for your signatures. I'm sorry I couldn't get a really good shot of this. I was trying so hard to let you guys see what I'm doing here, but it's so hard to see where I need to be poking the holes and try to be in the right spot for the camera. So use your imagination and, visualize me poking those holes in those signatures. After we get all of our holes punched in our card and in our signature, we're ready to start sewing. I'm going to use the 5-hole pamphlet stitch, and I'm going to begin and end on the back of the card so that all of our knots and stitching are hidden back there. That is one benefit of making a hidden spine like this. You get to hide all of your stitching. I kind of like to see the stitching sometimes in my junk journals, so sometimes I will end in the center, but for this one, I wanted it to look like a regular old book that's sitting on the shelf, so we're not going to have a whole bunch of stuff like dangles hanging out of the book. We're not going to have threads. It's just going to be a plain junk journal, and it's going to give the illusion of just another book on the shelf. After we get all of those sewn in, we're going to use some fabric. This is an old scarf that I found at a thrift store, and we're going to cut it down to the largest card size. So that bigger piece of card is the one that you're going to use to measure out the fabric, and you can use a little bit more and cut away later. That might be a little bit easier, actually. So once we have our square of fabric and our card ready to go, we're going to add glue to the spine, and I'm just brushing it on with the paintbrush. And after we get that glue on there, you want to get it good coverage over the spine. We're going to add our fabric. And you really do want to make sure that you get your fabric on and it's centered, because this is what's going to give our spine strength and integrity. We really want to have that fabric on both sides where we're attaching this to the book. So do your best to get it centered and then press it down really well. After that, we're adding another layer of glue, and then we're going to add that larger piece of card. The larger piece of card and the fabric are pretty well the same size, so you should be able to center this one up pretty easily as well. And once we get that card in the correct position and everything is centered, we're going to burnish that down really well. Because the signatures are already sewn in, it's a little tricky to burnish down everything on that card. So I use my fingers, I use my awl to get in between those signatures and make sure that everything is burnished down and glued down really well. I'm giving the spine a few minutes to dry with our text block, and I decided that I wanted to add a bookmark. So I took some vintage lace and a piece of vintage rickrack and stuck that down to the spine with glue and added a little piece of cardstock on top just to tuck that in safely and keep it secured down really well. After we do that, I'm going to take my text block and I'm going to trim off all the excess fabric that's sticking out around the edges. We want everything to be nice and tidy and the proper size to go inside of our book. So after we get all of this cut down and cut away, I'm going to do a dry fit and just see how the text block fits into the cover. And at this point, we can open that up a little bit more if we need to. But once we get this positioned in there and do a successful dry fit, we're ready to glue everything in. So I'm just going to take my glue and I'm going to add a really nice layer of glue to both sides of that cover and the end pages, and then slide our text block right up in there and then secure it down. We want to make sure and burnish this down really well, since this is what's going to be holding our text block in the book. So I'm taking my time to do that. And then we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. And then once we have that burnished down, our book is together. We have our text block inside of our cover and it's looking nice and neat. And here's where I realize I don't really love that gold foil so much. So I'm taking a piece of this fabric tape by Tim Holtz and I'm going to add that to my end pages. I don't know, I just didn't really like the way the gold foil was looking against that pretty robin's egg blue. So I felt like this was a good solution, since that tape is really kind of more of the vibe we're going with. So I'm just going to work that tape down and get it positioned so that it covers up the majority of that cardstock that I chose and didn't really like toward the end. I don't know, would you guys have added this, or would you have just gone with the cardstock the way it was? I don't know. I think I like the tape better. I honestly just wish that I had chosen a different cardstock. I don't know why I went with that one. At the time, it just felt right. Do you guys get crafter's remorse like that? Like, you are pretty certain you have the right thing picked out, and then toward the end, you're like, man, what was I thinking when I chose that? That is not what I like at all. So I guess we'll end this little clip with the boss coming in to supervise and, tell me how I'm doing on things. It's not a video unless little Elizabeth makes her appearance. So here we are the next day. Everything is dried and looking good. I love the tape. I don't love that I can still see that gold foil on that cardstock, so I might have to rethink that a little bit. But everything's looking great. We just need to do a few finishing touches on this and we'll be done with this book. Another good thing about doing the spine this way is look how flat this book opens up. It's like having a hollow back book. It just opens so nicely. So one of the last things that I wanted to do is to add this end page back to the front cover. I just really like the Ex Libris page and I wanted to use it. So I'm going to cut down this paper to the appropriate size so that I can have that Ex Libris kind of centered in that open space. Then I'm going to glue this down. I was so nervous about gluing this page down because the paper is rather thin and I just knew I was going to get a whole bunch of buckling with the paper since the glue is a little bit wet. But y'all, it did so well. I went for it and it laid down so nicely. There was no wrinkling, no bubbling, nothing. It laid down so smooth and beautiful. I was so happy that I gain the courage to actually try this. I was debating on whether or not to do it. And so it turned out really good. And I'm super, super happy with how it turned out. Look how beautiful and smooth that is. Good stuff. Also, that cattail, I just can't with her. Look at her. She's so sassy, y'all. The last thing I want to do is to add the original headbands back to this journal. Ideally, we would have done this before we put our text block into our book cover, but I did not think about it then. I completely forgot about these. So here we are at the end of the project trying to finagle our little headbands onto the back of our text block. So I just kind of took my time and worked on these until I got them in the right position, and then we're done with this book, guys. Okay guys, this one is all finished up and I cannot wait to show it to you. But can we take a minute just to admire the new craft mat? Look how beautiful and pristine it is. I just wanted everybody to take note of it because it probably won't stay this pretty for long. My husband got me this for Mother's Day and I am so in love with it. It's so new and there's no worn spots where I've over cleaned it. So I thought I would just take a minute to appreciate the beautifulness of my new craft mat. Anyway, getting back to the book, I think this one turned out so cool. My whole goal with this one was to be able to sit it on the bookshelf along with other books and not to be able to tell that it's a junk journal. And I think that we achieved that. I think if this were sitting on the shelf, you wouldn't know by looking at the spine that this is a junk journal. let's take a look at this pretty cover again. This is what, I don't know, I was just drawn to this pretty cover with the flowers. It just has that, I don't know, coquette, very grandma core or cottagecore feel to it. I thought it was just so pretty with the navy blue spine and then this pretty light blue with the white florals. I just loved it so much. The only thing that I did add to this journal that is not typical in all the books is a bookmark. And I feel like this is okay because we could easily sit on the shelf on top of the bookmark and you wouldn't know because the bookmark would be underneath the book. So I think we're getting away with that and still having it look like a regular old book on the shelf. But I did add a key to the little vintage rickrack and some seed beads to the ribbon. I just thought they were cute details that we could add. So let's open this guy up and take a look at it. The first thing that I'm super proud of is that the inside cover, we were able to use that end page that has the Ex Libris label on it, and it looks perfect. I was so worried that I would get some bubbling in this page because the paper is so thin and old and dry. I was worried that that wet glue would just cause it to buckle and do weird things, but y'all, it is so smooth and perfect, and it turned out so good. My other regret was using that shiny, here we go. Lizzie, it's too early for you to be in the video. Yeah, why don't you go to your box? My other regret with this journal was that I chose that gold metallic paper for the spine, and I did not love that we could see that. So I used this, it's that fabric tape, I believe it's called linen tape by Tim Holtz, and it has this beautiful like soft blue floral that just goes so well with this journal. So I used that to disguise the spine paper that I chose, and also some Tim Holtz distress tape. And throughout the journal, I've used distress tape with this pattern. You can see it here. It's basically his washi tape that has that same printed image on it, so that it's very cohesive as you go through the journal. You'll see that tape here on the edges too. But let's get going. I've done enough chatting. Let's look at this book. The first page we have is vellum, and I kind of love starting books this way. It serves as a really cool visual element, but it also protects the pages from anything that you might put on this first cover, the front cover. Have a little envelope, some music. This is vintage notebook paper. All of this beautiful colored aging is true aging on this paper. We've got that linen tape and design tape with matching patterns. Really old music paper, and not so old graph paper. This is a vintage page from a miniature atlas. And then we have a railroad corporation form that is authentic and vintage, and it folds out. This is coffee dyed paper. Another atlas page, fold out coffee dyed paper here with some more of that design tape. A piece of vellum that I just thought looked good with this book, and it is on a piece of graph paper. I love this little dictionary page. It is vintage, and I just love how teeny tiny it is. I love that so much. And here's the kitty again. It's going to be one of those days, guys. Take a look at this beautiful dyed paper. This is coffee dyed paper, but you can see as it was being dyed, there was another sheet of paper laying on top of it. So we kind of have the impression from the paper that was on top that's come through in this dyeing. So beautiful. I love it. Some more papers. This is also coffee dyed paper. It's ledger paper. Here's the other half of our sheets that we've looked at. The notebook paper, our other page for our little dictionary page, graph paper, fold out coffee dyed paper, atlas page, another coffee dyed paper, You'll notice there aren't a lot of embellishments in this journal, and that was intentional. This is the other half of that railroad station form. I really wanted to keep this journal pretty plain and free from all of the frills that I usually put in my junk journals. Not that you couldn't add those, I just kind of wanted this to look like a book sitting on the shelf. So I didn't want a whole lot of things sticking out of the journal. So that's why I chose not to add a whole bunch of stuff. This is the other half of that really old music paper, the vintage notebook paper, and a pretty little music page. We have an envelope pocket here. And then the last page in the signature is the vellum sheet, which I've added a long piece of that Tim Holtz distress tape. Not distress tape, Tim Holtz design tape, excuse me. The second signature starts out with this little vintage page here. It's from a little notebook. And then we have, this is, I think, a divider for maybe an address book. The other half of it has, you can see here, MC on it. I'm not exactly sure where it came from. I found these at the thrift store. This is authentic vintage primer paper. Hand-dyed notebook paper. This is a page from a field guide about rocks and minerals. Here's another envelope pocket. Hand-dyed paper. This is from a grade book. This is drawing paper, so it still has that translucency that vellum has, but it's a completely different feel to your hand. It's really nice, makes a good crinkly sound. This is a book page from a book on colors. This is authentic vintage notebook paper. This is a page from a dictionary. This is vintage ledger, not so vintage notebook paper. This is new vintage, so it was still new, brand new in the packaging, but it is old ledger paper. This is a page from a book that you would develop recipes in. And then here is an envelope pocket. We have our bookmark here. The other half of that recipe development page, ledger, notebook paper. The really good thing about making journals like this too, guys, I meant to mention this earlier, but this thing lays completely flat. Like, it is so easy to journal in because it just opens up completely flat. Look how flat. And it's so comfortable to journal in. This would be a really good one for someone who actually likes to write in their journals and spend some time reflecting and enjoying their writing, because it's so easy to open up and write in. Here's the other half of our book page on colors and our drawing paper. Here's the rest of the teacher's grade book page. It's a big flip out. Here's some more primer paper. This is just hand-dyed primer paper. Our little envelope flap. The other half of our field guide. More notebook and primer paper. And then here's the other half of that little divider. And our little tiny sheet of notebook paper. Okay, going into our last signature, we have a vintage atlas page, another music page, vintage notebook paper, a different sheet of drawing paper that is kind of a thicker weight, I would say. We have that beautiful design tape all over this journal. I just love that that makes it feel so cohesive and kind of makes everything feel put together. This is a ledger sheet. It is vintage. Some notebook paper. I love the square holes in this. Can y'all see that? This notebook paper, the holes are not round, they're square. And I thought that was pretty cool. And you also have the impression from the sheet that was on top of it. Kind of a cool detail. Here is some more graph paper, notebook paper with our linen tape. This is a book page from an art book, which is not wanting to come apart from this graph paper. It's just static. They're not stuck together. It's just like a static thing. Okay, here we go. I thought the greens looked really pretty together in this signature. This was my very last piece of staff paper, so I've got to get on Amazon and find some more of that. This is a giant index card. Some really pretty parchment that has a watermark. If you hold it up to the light, you can see that really clearly. This is a page from a book about US currency and coin collecting. Here's some more notebook paper. A really, really good sized pocket here. A different kind of ledger paper, the other half of our big pocket. A big trifold out piece of notebook paper that is vintage, and I dyed it with coffee dye. The other half of our currency page, our parchment paper page, our index card, and our staff paper. Here's the graph paper, the green graph paper, and the art book page. Notebook paper. Look how beautiful those colors are with that design tape. I just think it all flows so well and looks so pretty together. Graph paper with more design tape. Notebook paper with the square holes. Our ledger paper. This is the drawing paper. Notebook paper, music paper, and atlas page. And then here is our back cover with our pretty tape again here. And I hope you guys enjoyed this book. Oh, I forgot to show you, I did use the original headbands for this book, so those are there also. And it's a pretty book. It's fun to open up and to look at. I love that it has the little bookmark detail. It was just a fun one to work on. Didn't take a lot of brain power, and it was just fun to sit down and create. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. I can't thank you enough for how much support you've shown me so far in growing this channel. You guys have been great, and I appreciate every single comment that you leave and like that you give. I hope that you all enjoy it as much as I enjoy being here, and I really want to thank you for watching. And I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.